All right, YouTube, we're live. Hey, welcome back to the channel today. Got an exciting guest. Pete is with us today, and he is, as Justin put in, an animal in the weight room and on the deadlift specifically. So we're going to talk a lot about that and his world-class powerlifter as well as coach, amongst a number of other things we're going to unpack today. My co-host, as always, back from Mexico, Mr. Justin Harris. Happy to see you. He's awake and alive and alert,
back
he tells
for
me.
several hours at this point on this early morning.
Well, good deal. We're gonna jump
more, but
yeah, it's not more. We're a couple hours in, but we're gonna jump into everything. But the usual kind of YouTube housekeeping. As a reminder, definitely subscribe to the channel. We love that. We appreciate all the subscribers. We've been growing a ton the last 2 months. We got some really exciting Q&A sections coming up as well. Those of you who've been emailing in or commenting your questions, our panel of experts are just super pumped to either come back on the channel or send us their responses. And so we're going to be having some Q&A sessions coming up soon. As always, too, reminder, turn on those notifications, because as you know, we break down some of these interviews in segments or shorts just to kind of get some nuggets information out there. And comments. Like those comment sections, put the questions you want answered in there, and we will gladly get back to you. That's one of our big passions with the channel here, is providing good, great quality educational content you can apply right after the show. So that's all I have for the YouTube verse out there. But so welcome. Great to meet you. I heard a lot about you, and it's awesome to finally be able to get you on. I know you got a busy schedule running the gym and family life and changing lives and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
So we thought it'd be kind of fun to, as we like to do often, is like, just we'll get to all the accomplishments, but starting at the beginning, we were talking, like to hear a little bit about how you got into training and stuff, because one thing I think everyone can know, and I'll let Justin, maybe before you answer that, talk about how he would often go to your Instagram or, find you on social media for his motivation. But do you want to maybe speak to that a little bit, Justin?
Yeah. I mean, everyone's got their people they I don't know, follow or gets them motivated. And there's several people for me who always have been, like a Dusty Hanshaw, watching his workouts. If I need extra motivation, Jordan Peters. But then for years, I mean, geez, it's going back to almost to when I competed. If I was doing a back day or deadlift and I needed like a little extra oomph, it was always Pete. I'd find some videos on YouTube or Instagram of Pete deadlifting, and Pete's deadlifting form. Yeah, I mean, I don't know everyone says I deadlift like a bodybuilder, so don't trust me at all on what I call the best form. But I always thought Pete's was like the best pure deadlift form as far as his body structure. Just everything was in perfect position and just, like maximal use of efficiency. So he was always my deadlift guy to follow, for sure.
Well, and good thing we have his Instagram up. We'll definitely pull some of those up. But Pete, why don't you tell us a little about just kind of how you got started with lifting and walk us through your journey a little bit.
Yeah, so I was 14 years old. My dad kind of had like a weight set in the basement, nothing crazy, just that old, rusty bench and barbell, stuff like that. So he was kind of getting into working out in his 40s, and I took interest in it as well. Just started with like, the typical routine, benching all the time, doing curls, abs, trying to get abs from doing 1 million sit-ups, because that's how I thought it worked, stuff like that. So, and I just kind of fell in love with it. I eventually progressed into like deadlifting. We got a little more serious. We got some more equipment, started squatting, doing all the main lifts, and I kind of just ran with it from there. And it was always like a part of, high school athletics, whether it was, football or basketball or track or whatever. We would be, doing a little bit of lifting. And even more so than the sports themselves, I enjoyed lifting a lot more. So I kind of leaned into that. And even, come my junior year of high school, after that, I called it quits on all the sports for my senior year and just stuck with lifting, because I really enjoyed that part more than anything. And like you get into the season, you kind of lose weight, lose strength and stuff like that. I didn't want to go through that. So early on, I was hitting like pretty strong numbers on deadlift, like 500 pounds at a pretty young age, and bench was lagging a bit. But I really just, felt that love for it, and like lifting heavy is what I was passionate about. So it kind of spiraled from there, and I started posting videos on YouTube. Didn't expect like really any attention. but it was the early days of YouTube as well, so
Right.
there wasn't much out there. And the videos just started to catch on, kind of this like deadlifting in front of the washer and dryer in my parents' basement.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
those
And
are
I just
the videos.
yeah, it was just like there was a lot of raw energy as far as kind of feeling like an outcast type kid who just wanted to go home and lift, and there wasn't, I didn't have a lot of friends or anything, so I had that pent up energy, and it came out, and people kind of they saw those videos, and it started becoming a thing. I started getting attention for it.
That's funny because I am looking at it right now, so I got to show everybody. Sorry to go ahead. Feel free to chime in, Justin. I have to.
Everyone knows the wash and dryer videos. Everyone. If you are into working out, you've seen Pete. Yeah.
Oh,
of course.
Of course.
Come on.
You got to get YouTube.
No, these are kind of cringy now that I'm like, it's like 15 years later, but it's all good.
Don't worry. I got the cringy ones myself. Yeah.
I'm kind of like, now here was actually probably 10 years ago, because I know I was on some testosterone at this point, maybe a little D-ball. I can't remember exactly, but because I started taking, PEDs at age 20. So I know at this point it was just like, it was all about just ridiculous speed was the goal on every rep. Like you're trying to pull as fast as possible. But I want to say this was about my first cycle, 20 years old here. And that was,
was your dad there with you?
No, he wasn't. He was not in the room all the time, but this is a really small room, actually. It just stretches across horizontally. He would be there sometimes, spotting me or whatever. But I mean,
I heard someone yell that a boy, so I didn't know. Sorry.
If you look on the list, a kind of a good example for Pete, because as we get older, I'm in the same boat. My big stuff was 15 years ago, so the young guys don't know who I am. But if you look on the list of videos there, you'll see Rubish, Green, Lillibridge, Efforting, raw squats. That's the level he was at. I mean, he was one of the guys. And Pete, correct me if I'm wrong. What was the one? How many? I can't remember if it was every workout every day, or there was some stretch where every single deadlift workout you went over 800 pounds, and it was some ridiculous length of time, if I remember. Am I remembering that correctly, or did I?
I mean, I would lift. Like back then, it was very reckless. I just put my body through, every day lifting heavy. There was never a plan with the training. There was never structure to it. It was just go in and lift heavy. And, you're 20, 22 years old, you can get away with it. You can just keep pushing your body to these limits. So,
yeah, I just remember it was like kind of a myth. It was like a little myth in the weight room. Like, Pete did 30 workouts in a row, every one of them over 800-pound deadlifts, or what? Who knows what it actually was? But you know how myths go, and they just grow over time.
Yeah, I could never do that now. My body feels so different. But back then, it was kind of that feeling of invincibility, and you're like, being on your first cycle and stuff like that. It was just crazy. It was I miss that feeling to an extent. It's just
how
you are when you're 20 years old. You don't think anything can hurt you. You're just
No, I know that feeling, and I know that miss. I miss it myself. What I was talking about with deadlift, my problem with deadlift is I have not necessarily short arms, but for whatever reason, I short arm my deadlifts. And I always used to study Pete's deadlift because he would, I don't know what he does, but he would do something where it looked like his shoulders sunk down to about nipple level. And so basically, even despite not having really incredibly long arms or anything, it looked like he was able to shorten his range of motion on deadlift. Yeah, you'll see. Just absolutely maximize see, look where his shoulders are. And yeah, just maximal efficiency. I saw it. I mean, there's a lot of guys I was a fan of when I was lifting and stuff, but Pete's deadlift was always, I would study that before deadlift workouts for years, trying to get, I was terrible at mimicking it, and I was never able to, but that was always kind of the form I wanted to pull off.
Yeah, 805 for 2. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Pete could have been a 900-pound deadlifter 100%.
So you started you started lifting in high school. I'm sure the coaches were really happy when your senior year you decided to just lift and not do sports, right? I know I would have lost my mind as a coach, like what? But
yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. Like I love lifting more. So.
And so you were competing in powerlifting in high school then? Or was it just?
Yeah, I mean, I got into it at like 17 was the first meet, and I didn't know what I was doing. I kind of showed up without reading the rules, so I didn't have like the necessary equipment. I didn't have a singlet or anything. It's like if you signed up for a bodybuilding show and showed up without like posing trunks. It was kind of like
Right.
that. I didn't know what I was doing. And then, so I hated the first experience, but then I gave it a shot again after I met some guy in college who now owns Madtown Fitness, Dan Paschalk. And he kind of was like, you got some talent here. You got to really push this. And he got me into competing again. Then I met the Lily Bridges, and it just spiraled from there. So I got linked up with people who were really strong, and they kind of things started opening up after that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think, and one of the things you mentioned beforehand that you were just, you know, kind of talking about is you were kind of, you know, natural, just working through things, getting stronger, really hit a certain level, used PEDs for a while, and then been back natural last, what was it, 2-3 years now, or?
Yeah, it was November 2020. And honestly, I just came off because I wanted to have a child. So I was like, and I know you don't necessarily have to do that, but that was what we talked about. And I came off everything, and I've just been off ever since. And nothing's really the test levels, they haven't really bounced back. So it's kind of it's one of those things I struggle with because I kind of have something to prove with myself too, because I feel like I started the PEDs too early when I still could have pushed it a lot longer without them and gotten stronger. And I just hopped on too soon, I felt like. And now I want to see how strong I can get without them. But at the same time, like the levels haven't come back. And I've checked it like 10 times over the last 2 years. And the highest it's gotten with the test levels is 409. The
Sure.
last one at the 2-year juncture last month was 271 test levels. It just, and I know it can fluctuate, but I've checked it like 10 times literally. And
Yeah.
the highest I've hit is 409. So I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, I could take TRT and my lifts would absolutely blow up again, even on that. But I grapple with it, you know?
Sure. Well, I know, I think, you know, like you said, it's, how old were you when you started PEDs?
20. So now I'm 31. I was on for about 8-9 years. And I mean, I ran crazy cycles. Like I pushed it. I started like getting away from it a little more once I saw what happened to Dallas McCarver, because we were at the same gym all the time. And he was the same age as me. Like we were at the same gym in Kentucky, and then we both moved to Tennessee, and we were at the same gym here because I was at the same gym as Matt Jansen. I knew Matt. I went to his house all the time. And so we like trained, you know, at the same gyms. And I saw Dallas, and I saw what happened to him. And then Chris Hickson, another guy who was like really tight with the Lily Bridges, he passed away at 29. And then Boston Lloyd, I was texting the guy the night before he passed away. So it's just all these things. I was like, all right, I should probably dial in my health after having times where I'd run cycles of 3 grams, you know? So it was, that played a role as well. And like having a kid, and I'm like, I probably want to be around for a while.
Sure.
But I know there's healthier ways to do it too, like on TRT. So I'm not like ruling that out down the line.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your openness on that. I know, you know, it's a lot of people are making a lot of mistakes, and hopefully, you know, they can listen to people like yourself who are talking openly about those things, about, you know, your, you know, things that you're experiencing. And I think it's interesting too, you say, you know, starting too early, because that was something that we've heard from several like elite lifters or bodybuilders was, just giving the body and the muscle time to get to like its prime natural ability is a big thing. I know Justin talks a lot about that, is like, if you're going to do that, like, okay, that's not what the topic's about, but it's about, you know, even just from an injury and a health standpoint. I think that's a big thing. I don't know if Justin, you have any feedback on that, but a lot of young people either blowing out their careers too soon, or even more than that, like getting injuries because their bodies just aren't naturally like built up to handle the load that they're from, you know, doing exogenous things.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not, you know, there's just not a lot of data by the medical community, which sucks because, and you can understand that, you know, it's not legal, and so why would they? And they're just going to say it's bad, so why would they study it? But you know, the medical community studies all other bad things. They study obesity, they study the rise in, you know, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome. They study alcoholism. They study, you know, tobacco use,
drug addictions.
There's drug study after drug study for everything. And so, but for whatever reason, the stigma as far as PEDs is just so strong that there's no real world, no clinical data on it, which is really terrible, because it's one of the things that that people, the person who gets really into lifting typically does when they're late teens, usually something like that. And then they're introduced to this world of PEDs around the same time. And you're very impressionable. You don't, at that age, you don't think about the future. And I think that's one of the biggest disservices that the medical community does is, if you go, if you're 40% body fat or morbidly obese, when you go into the doctor's office, they'll give you all kinds of information on how to improve your health, how to help fix that. And if you don't improve your health and you just stay obese, they'll still treat you. They'll treat you like a normal human. They'll do everything they can to keep you as healthy as possible, even though you're morbidly obese and even though you're continuing to do these things that are unhealthy for your body. But if you go into a doctor's office on PEDs, all they're going to say is stop taking them. They'll do nothing to help treat you while you're taking them. They'll do nothing to work you through them to get off them. And it's really it's terrible because people get obese in their 30s, where at that point you're a fully formed adult. Your prefrontal cortex is formed. You're making decisions with more of a lifelong, more of a future thought. When you're 18, right, you don't think about the future. I mean, you just don't. Your brain isn't even developed enough to fully even understand that there's a future. And I think it's one of the worst things the medical community does is give no guidance on that. If I'm an 18-year-old kid on PEDs and I realize I made a mistake and I want to fix things, and you go to a doctor's office, all you're going to do is get berated. You're not going to get any information on how to properly come off. No doctor is going to prescribe PCT. They're not going to prescribe HMG, HCG, Clomid. They're just going to tell you to get off it and basically scold you and tell you you're a bad person. You go into a doctor's office as a 500-pound 30-year-old, they'll treat your high blood pressure. They'll get you on metformin. They'll give you cholesterol medication, and they'll give you booklet after booklet after booklet, and even sign you up with a nutritionist to help lose weight. Just two totally different experiences. And I would absolutely argue that the 30-year-old is far more cognizant of their future, what they're doing, and how they got to this point than the 18-year-old who got talked into PEDs by a buddy at the gym. Right. So I think it really, really bothers me because there's just so little data on it.
No, that's a good point. Pete, did you experience anything early on in your training? Just, I think one thing for the listeners out there to know, though, is the strength was pretty dang high before you started, although years wise you were young. It was still pretty dang high. And I think a lot of times, the average 18-year-old, as Justin saying, they're just getting into the gym and they think, let me blast, right? And it's like, well, let's mature. So like, what were some of your weights or accomplishments before starting? And then what was that kind of change you saw in that time frame?
Yeah, I think my squat was at 570. And that was like before I knew about a belt and knee sleeves and all that kind of stuff that guys wear now. I think bench was about 315, which was the one that was the lowest. And then deadlift was 700. In a competition, it was like 740 on bumper plates in the gym at my house. So like the lifts, they were fairly high, but honestly, like I think I could have pushed things quite a bit higher, especially bench. I just didn't know how to like train it well. And then obviously on PEDs, they got up to in competition 772 squat. That was in knee sleeves instead of knee wraps. Bench was 463. I hit 485 in the gym. And then deadlift was 871 in competition. And in the gym, it was 920 because it was different plates. They go out a little further, makes it a little easier, a little more bar bend. And
here's one of your 832s, I think.
Yeah, this was the meet. I actually tore my quad on the squat. So the squat for this meet, it was 783. Felt amazing, unracked it. It didn't even feel that heavy. Perfect training cycle. I went down with it, hit the bottom, and I felt the vastus lateralis rip. So this might have been it. This was maybe the opener. Yeah. And then the third one over on that one is where the quad tore. The right vastus lateralis popped hard at the bottom. That was 733. So this was 783, felt great, like walked it out. I was like, okay, I got this. I know, I just felt the pop. So it kind of affected my deadlift at that point because I couldn't get much leg drive. But I still remember this was the last heavy squat I ever did 5 years ago. And it just, I felt it right there. Like it just, when I hit the hole, it just popped.
Did you hear it?
Oh yeah, it was like a freaking gunshot. I thought I was done for.
Yeah, I tore my quad. It sounded like it all happened so fast. It's almost the same right exploding out of the bottom. I thought someone had a pair of jeans behind me and was ripping the jeans.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
It took like a split second before I realized that wasn't jeans, that was my leg.
yeah. So the left one is the normal quad, what it looks like, and then the right is obviously all the swelling after the tear. So that was fun, but that was that was the last heavy squat I did, and that kind of freaked me out after that, because I was there when I saw a guy, Mark Miller, at a meet. He had 800 pounds with knee wraps, and he hit the bottom, and he tore both his quad tendons and I think he blew out his patellas, and he literally, it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like I was 10 feet away from the platform, seeing a guy go down to his knees, just blow his legs out, and I know that it happened to Brandon Lilly as well, so it started playing with my, mess with my head. Because it was 2 months after I tore my quad in a much less severe fashion, and he just blew his legs out like it was crazy. So that kind of messed with me a little bit after seeing that, and I kind of got away from heavy squats. But
yeah, that's hard. You can't, like, once that thought's in your mind, that's partly why, like, young guys. I mean, there's powerlifting is turning more into a longevity sport, and there's a lot of older guys putting up big numbers. But a big part of it is that you have to be just absolutely fearless. And as soon as that like thought creeps into your mind, you're done. You can't go down on a squat with any thought about, oh, I'm about to get injured. It has to be 100%. I'm getting this weight up.